Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at radio buttons in Java Swing. So at the moment I've got this nice little form here, and in the last tutorial we added this checkbox here, and in this tutorial I'm going to add some radio buttons down here. Now radio buttons are a little bit more complex than checkboxes, but nothing you can't handle. So I'm going to have checkboxes here that represent gender. So to keep things nice and simple, I'll just have two alternatives, male and female, and I'm going to start by creating my radio buttons here. So I'll say private JRadio button, and just to repeat what I said in the last tutorial, radio buttons allow you to choose between mutually exclusive options. So if you have options that you can select together, you want checkboxes, but if you've got to pick one option from a bunch of several, you want radio buttons. So let's call this male radio, and and then I'll create another one called, let's just add the import there, JRadio button female radio. So I'm just going to have two of them. And you also need a button group to use with radio buttons. So I'll say private button group, gender group. And button groups are what allow you to group the buttons together so that you can say that if one of them is selected, then the other should be deselected automatically, which is the usual behavior of radio buttons. So now let's go down here and say male radio equals new JRadio button, and I'll give that some text by the side of it there, which says male, and female radio equals new JRadio button. Female, of course, female. And I'm going to add those to the button group. So I'll say here gender group equals new button group, and notice it's button group and not J button group, which I think is because I think this comes from the AWT, the previous window toolkit that used to exist in Java. I'm not sure. So let's set up the gender radios here. Set up gender radios. And I'm going to start by adding those two radio buttons to the button group. So I'll say gender group.add male radio, and gender group.add female radio. And now let's go ahead now and add those to the form, and we'll see a couple of little problems that come up which we can then fix. So I'm going to add the radio buttons on two rows here. So let's copy one of these rows, and here I'll add the male radio, and I'm going to put a label by the side of that on the left there that says gender, and then on the next row that should be new J label, new J label. On the next row I'm going to add the next radio button. So let's go down here, paste this, and I don't need a label for that, so I'll get rid of that, and I'll say female, add the female radio. There we go. So if I look at that now, one obvious problem is that these are really widely spaced, and that's just the spacing on my my grid layout. So let's go to where I had the male radio and reduce the weight Y for this particular row. So let's set it to something really small, like 0.05. So that looks quite a lot better. And this label looks a bit misaligned. I'm not paying too much attention to these labels as I go through, because fiddling with the labels takes a huge amount of time. And it's a matter of taste, but I will just fix this gender control because it looks really ugly. Let's go to here and just change it from first line end to line end, so it's aligned in the middle of the row like that. So that looks a bit better, I think. Now neither of them are selected at the moment, so let's go up here, and I'm going to go to the mail radio here, and I'm going to set it to selected by default. So mail radio.set selected true, and if I run that, then we've got male selected, and if I select female because they belong to a button group, selecting one deselects the other as I want. Now the next interesting challenge here is how to find out which one is selected. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that you absolutely can add action listeners to radio buttons, but I won't do that here. I want to actually get the information about which is selected at the end there. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do mail radio.add action, actually not add but set action command, and set action command lets you set a string that you can then retrieve from the button with get action command. So I'm going to set this equal to mail, and this is separate to the label here. This is some text for kind of internal purposes. And let's do the same thing with the female radio here. So female radio.set action command female. And now what I can do is, if I go to the action listener on the button, so down here, this is where I'm collecting all my data, I can say string gender command equals, and I can use the button group, so gender group dot get selection, and that's going to return the button, the radio button that's it's going to return actually the button model of the radio button, and on that I can do get action command like this. So that's going to return male or female, and of course I could do a dot equals on that string here and change it to a boolean if I wanted, or something like that. But let's just put gender in here, and let's go to, if I click on form event and go to and hit F3 in Eclipse, so I can go to the declaration of it, and here I can say string gender and just do the usual stuff like here, so private string gender, and this dot gender equals gender, and I could supply it with a get gender, of course. So if I go to source, generate getters and setters, and I can have just a getter for gender. Okay, so there we go. And just to show you that working, let's maybe, let's change gender command to gender actually. That makes more sense. And in the main frame, of course, I could, where I receive the event, I could make use of gender somehow if I wanted. So let's just do a sysout for the moment. So if I've got this form event E being received here, so I can say e.getGender now, because I've just added that method, get e.get gender, and if I run that, you're going to see that when I select one of these buttons and click OK, then it's going to say female or male, just according to what I select. So if I don't touch it, then it's going to be male. And there's my string that I outputted previously, which I'm going to remove actually. Okay, so yeah, that's that. So like in the next tutorial, we're going to take a break from looking at all these different form controls, you'll be pleased to know, and we're going to look at menus. We're going to look at the J menu control. So join me again then, and until next time, happy coding.